I saw Sanders on television on the Fox Sunday morning news show, which I thought was, credit to Fox. They brought him on,
Hmm.
and he got and they were. I thought they did a good job of saying, okay, how are you different from Hillary? And he laid it out. And he said, on many issues we're the same, and on many issues she's come over to my side, which is, of course, part of the political strategy. However, the real point that he made is look back at my voting record and look at hers and see who's been consistent and who's changing as the political environment changes.
Well, let's lay it out there with the real truth. The real truth. Hillary is the best establishment Republican candidate out there right now. Because that's what she is. She is the establishment Republican candidate and a dream come true for the Republicans on many levels because they win either way if she runs. If she wins, you basically have a Republican president. Because Mistopheles and Beelzebub, they don't care who marries who. They don't care about that. They don't care if a few poor people are getting health care. They don't care about that. They don't care if people have guns or don't have guns. What they do care about is the military-industrial complex and keeping Wall Street, keeping the inequality train a-rolling, and no free trade, like just unadulterated trade and low wages in other countries. That's what they care about. They don't care about these social issues. So Hillary is a dream come true. The other great thing about Hillary running is she will cause such apathy with the Democratic base that nobody's going to vote or care. Because if you look at the stats, most Democrats don't even like her. They'll only vote for her because they have to. And she's alienating Bernie's base right now. So she's a dream come true for Republicans on all levels, establishment Republicans.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's the perfect candidate for the for the evil coalition, for the banking establishment, income inequality, warmongering base. She's perfect, right?
Yeah, I would say that's true. She's actually just a politician at a time when we need statesmen, and that's the problem. Is that there's a difference between being someone who will blow with the wind to big donors and the political zeitgeist of the moment, and somebody who actually believes in something and stands for something. Now, of course, as you know, and as you can tell from my background, I don't have any problem with us having a strong military. I think it has to be used judiciously and effectively. When I heard Obama saying he was going to send 50 special forces people to, what the hell is he thinking? So, but anyway, you're absolutely right on Hillary. She's a Republican, no matter what she says. I mean, and this is where
establishment Republican. She's an establishment Republican because the establishment Republicans still don't like Cruz. They don't like Trump. They don't like Carson. They want their person that's just going to kind of keep everything the same, keep inequality train a-rolling, military industrial complex a-rolling, no regulation where it counts for them. I don't think they care about gay marriage or any of that crap. I don't think they really care. But on the social issues, it's the crazy religious people that care about that.
Here's the interesting part and the sad and disturbing part about the quote unquote establishment Republicans is that if you said are Republicans pro-business or anti-business, which would you say they are?
Republicans?
Yeah.
Well, they're pro-big business, but
Okay.
they're
Well,
anti-little. They're anti-little business.
You made the exact point. Is that yes, they are. Ironically, it would even be better for big businesses if small businesses were able to get capital and people were able to have higher incomes and make more money and buy more stuff. They would actually be better off, but they don't get that. So they're in the
Well, yeah, and it's hard to get that when you live in that world because it's just completely out of touch with anything that real people actually deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And who knows what the smell and allure of power is like, and who knows what your being is when your soul no longer exists, because you cannot lie that easily and that flippantly and that devil may carely without two devils on your shoulder at all times. Just who cares? I've sold my soul. I just don't care anymore. I'll just say whatever I want and do whatever I need to fulfill my insatiable lust for historic greed and power.
Yeah. Well, in the media age, of course, that's what works.
Well, and the media is at those meetings.
Yeah.
The mass media is completely untrustworthy now, and is basically like Pravda. It's just propaganda. They're just making stuff up for the unwashed masses,
Well,
basically.
I'm interested in the next debate on Fox, because someone, and you were talking about all of the, it still comes down to, in my view, making a strong and growing economy in the U.S. That will solve so many problems, and I don't mean the people in the not even 1%, it's the half of 1% think the economy is doing great.
Well, it is for them.
It is for them.
It's doing great for them. So why change it? If it's doing great for them, why change it?
Well, the words now are coming out that we have full employment, and this is how out of touch even the Fed is. Because this was a Fed governor from San Francisco who said this: when we have the lowest labor participation rate in 38 years, yet we have full employment. Which part of that don't they understand? Secondarily, how many people are underemployed? If you looked at that, the numbers would be staggering.
Well, because people just make stuff up. They just make it up. It's all just sort of made up. It is. It's like being in this bad dream you can never wake up from. But the bottom line is Hillary is the best establishment Republican candidate out there right now, and is the Republican establishment candidate, dressed up in a bunch of lies as some progressive. But if you look at the core values that are being pursued and the vague answers that you get on everything else.
Well, one can simply extrapolate from the fact of look who her donors and backers are.
Yeah, even the private prison system donates money to her. That's why she's so like just always finding just enough. Like, okay, let's make marijuana a class 2 drug, which is like cocaine and all this other stuff. Let's not decriminalize it nationally like Sanders is calling for, but if I say that, it'll look like I'm, just enough to look like this. Or wording things like wording TTP. Well, right now I don't really like it, but it's like it's just always, but she has the master in her ear, and that's Bill Clinton. He is the absolute master of doublespeak. And so he's a genius. He's a flat-out genius. And when you have, Aristophanes, Beelzebub, and Bill Clinton as your advisors, that's a pretty strong posse. That is a strong posse.
Yeah.
And you have CNN at your meetings, and you have CNBC, and you're just all sitting around going, all right, how do we do this? What do we do? What do we report?
They literally are coaching her every night on the news.
Right.
Of
what news do we invent? What story do we invent to further propel you?
Now, here was one of the interesting things. I really was hoping that Bernie was going to be, when he was on the Fox show yesterday, more direct about how am I going to help the economy. And it was these tangential things like, let's have free, college for everybody and so forth. And it was funny. I was, watching one of the business shows, and they had on, one of the top recruiters. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, I'm so happy my daughter, finally got a job. Here's one of the top recruiters. And she's making $11 an hour. Now, she went to college. She's got a huge college debt. Of course, this guy's doing well, so he'll pay it off for her. But think about the average person out there who's sitting there with a $1.2 or $3 trillion worth of college debt. how are they going to pay that off? So I was hoping Bernie would say, that's just the beginning, and here's how we generate revenue and grow the economy now. And he didn't do that. It was partially because the opening question brought him off on the tangent of Hillary and the emails. And he has modified that stance now. I told you, when they brought up the emails in Benghazi originally, those are two kind of different issues. It's not really about Benghazi. Nobody talks about all the diplomats that got killed under Bush 43's watch. What it is about is absolutely throwing the national secrets and interests into the universe by having them go through your own personal... This is insane. And the oath, not a verbal agreement, the oath which she took to protect those, that... And Bernie kind of danced around that when he said, this really speaks to what kind of decision-making process you have. That, how did you think, it's okay, that's those rules, that oath means...
Yeah, well, when you are above the law, I mean, do you think Putin cares where his stuff is? Do you think he cares? He doesn't care, because he doesn't have to care. Hillary Clinton doesn't have to care because she is above the law. Straight up. So she doesn't care. She can do what she wants.
Can you imagine the parties with Bill and Putin?
Yeah, there'd be a lot of women there, that's for sure. Hot women.
Hot women, very hot women.
I mean, doing nothing but serving them, just like, catering and, bringing the hors d'oeuvres and probably wearing some intriguing outfits. But,
I think there would be. But yeah, it is, so if you're, and that was the one good point that he made, is you cannot be above the law just because you're running for president.
Right, but the point is she is above the law. That's the point. She is above the law. And some people are above the law, and she's one of them.
It shouldn't be that way.
But it is that way. I mean, that's how the world is. There's always people above the law. There's always people above. When you're the king, or you're the queen, and she's the queen, rules don't apply to those people throughout history. And even now, like I said, Putin, you think Putin could shoot somebody on television and nothing would happen? Of course he could, because the laws don't apply to him. He's the emperor of Russia, literally. So he can do whatever. If he wants to take a Super Bowl ring from somebody and walk away with it, he can do it. Most people can't do that. You couldn't take a Super Bowl ring and walk away. Something would happen. People would stop you. People would run up and stop you because you wouldn't have an army of people with guns saying, "No, you don't. No, not happening."
At least Kraft had the intelligence not to try to do anything about it, because he would have been
right, because he can't do anything about it, and there's a lot you can't do about Hillary because she is above the law.
Well, I think at least Bernie made that point. We'll see. I think the next couple of debates are going to be very interesting and entertaining.
I mean, luckily Bernie is not dumb.
No, he's not dumb.
He's not a dumb guy. He's a smart guy and he's a reasonable guy, and so he's just got to be a little more cunning. He's not cunning enough. That's his thing. Is it to be successful in any kind of politics? You have to be, at least you have to know when to be cunning. Even if you're not naturally cunning, you have to know, all right, I need to, like Abraham Lincoln is an example of that, or Franklin Roosevelt. They knew they had to be cunning at some point because they were going against people who were nothing but cunning. Yeah. Hillary Clinton is pure cunning.
I think the last politician we had who didn't really have cunning, of course I'm not a total history expert, but I would say it was George Washington. But the country being in its infancy, people took that much more seriously.
Well, and the thing that George Washington had, he had a sidekick who was totally smart and totally cunning. and that was Alexander Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Was his sidekick, and Hamilton was really smart and really cunning. And so he had Hamilton as a sidekick, and it was a different time. I agree, but cunning is always a factor.
They didn't think of it in the sense of, I read the book Founding Brothers, which was, I think, it won the Pulitzer Prize, and they made the point that they felt the gravity of their situation. They were launching an experiment for the world that had never been done. Do you think Hillary feels any gravity?
No, none. And that's exclamation point's problem is he's not cunning. He's trying to be cunning because he's grown up his whole life around people who are cunning. And the thing is, the third generation crime bushes don't really have to be cunning because they're surrounded by. When you have Cheney, it doesn't get any more cunning than that. I mean, you have the most cunning of the cunning in your circle. So it doesn't really. I don't think it allowed the younger Bushes to develop much cunningness because they were surrounded by so much. I mean, their old man was cunning, their grandfather was cunning, but they were pampered and just like, all right, we can tell our boys what to do. Jeb, fill my whiskey glass. That's all they were doing. So they didn't develop the cunningness. But Hillary has just been straight up cunning.
Speaking of cunning, how would you assess the Republicans?
In what way?
On the level of who's cunning, who's not cunning.
Well, exclamation point is definitely not Trump is cunning.
Yeah.
Trump is definitely cunning.
Yeah, he's been living it for a long time. I mean.
And he even says it. He says, like, these other leaders, they're cunning. We're not cunning. And I don't think, like, when Obama got in office, he was very cunning. And that's why he had so many problems when he...
He's still not. Still not.
I mean, he because it's not in him to that level. I mean, it's got to be like in you on some level. But I think Ted Cruz is cunning.
Yeah.
He's cunning. Rubio is cunning in training.
Yeah. He's I would say you certainly can't say Ben Carson's really cunning.
No, he's not cunning.
So, and Carly is
cunning. Carly has very little to work with on other levels, but what she does have to work with is she is super, super cunning. Extremely cunning. I mean, that's all she really has to. She's smart and she's cunning.
Secretary to CEO.
Yeah. but she's not Hillary Clinton cunning. She's not at that level. She's like junior varsity cunning. She's like, I can tell you. See, pure cunning is when you're fooling people that you're not cunning, or you don't know that they're cunning. So that's where Bill Clinton is a genius. Yeah. Because he's as cunning as they come, but he doesn't come off as cunning at all, And that's how Hillary is being coached, is to be cunning but not seem like you're cunning.
Yeah.
And Farina just comes off as cunning. Yeah. Like you wouldn't want to hang out with her at all.
No. In fact, one of the CEOs was saying, how do I hire people? Is I only hire if they fit in our culture. This is a startup because you can't have people pulling in different directions. Mm-hmm. Everybody has to be pulling in the same direction. Mm-hmm. And so he said, it was a woman. She said, if I wouldn't take a 2-hour train ride with the person, they won't fit in our culture. So, to your point, Hillary's convinced people maybe you can take. She's not Bill. Bill would be like everybody. I'm going on that ride with Bill.
Bill is a genius.
Yeah.
Bill is probably the greatest statesman of his time.
Statesman?
No. But I mean by statesman is orator. Maybe orator is a better word. Not statesman, but orator. Like speaking to the people, looking at you and going, I believe you. I believe what you're saying. Or he can spin something around. You're going, God, I know he's spinning this, but I believe it. even though you know you're being sold a lemon, it's like, I know it's a lemon, but I'm still going to buy it. I mean, he's a genius. He's
Yeah,
a
I would say
freaking
politician, not statesman. I would say statesman was Abraham Lincoln.
right, right, okay, orator, politician.
Yeah,
He's the best of the best.
yeah, I would agree. I think in his own way, he's even better. He was even better than Reagan, and Reagan was great. Um, the problem with Reagan was you knew he was an actor.
Right.
So, the people who were against Reagan were like, "Hey, this guy is acting. That's all he's. This is another role for Ronald."
Well, and you also got the feeling that Reagan was never totally in control. Like, I'm convinced after he was shot, Pappy Bush was running the show after that. I think he was just down in the basement watching Rocky movies after that. No, seriously, seriously, I don't think he was doing much of anything after that.
Well, you're going to be surprised on who agrees with you. Bill O'Reilly in the book Killing Reagan.
Mm.
And of course, H.W. Or Bush 41 took real offense at the way he was portrayed in that book, which, O'Reilly's not stepping back from. He's saying, look, I interviewed a lot of people. This is what they told me.
Well,
so
yeah.
you might be right.
Yeah, but the difference with that is Bill Clinton was not in the basement, never in the basement watching Rocky movies. He was hands on setting.
He was
stuff
partying
up.
He was hands on with interns.
He was hands on. Yeah, he was a lot hands on, and they've been planning Hillary's coronation since that time. It's been in the works. It's been the long con. It's the long con, and America. Well, I don't know if America's buying it. See, the media is telling us America is buying it. But the media is part of the con. The media is part of the long con. So it's an interesting conundrum right now because the real question is how much is alternative media really educating people and how much is bubbling under that's not being reported and not showing up anywhere? That is the question. Because nobody really likes Hillary. People love Sanders. People hate Trump. People love Trump. But he elicits an emotion from people.
Well, right. And the worst thing to be as a politician is someone that they can't really get behind, that they're not really feeling passionate about. And this is, of course, as you said before, the problem with Democrats having Hillary is a lot of the people aren't going to show up to vote.
No, and a lot of Democrats aren't going to show up to vote, and that's going to mean more Republican sweepage, and because people will vote against things, and so really, Hillary is a Republican dream come true because they're going to win. Establishment Republicans win either way. Either way, they win, and what's amazing is establishment Democrats are so blind to this and so concerned about keeping their place and keeping their bits of power and keeping their free medical care and their credit cards and their long vacations and their gifts from their constituents that they're not seeing the fact that they might get booted out of office and that this is all going to come crashing down because it's all they can see.
Yeah, as I said, there's total lack of leadership really on the side of moving things forward.
Imagine riddle me this. Imagine this. Imagine somehow Ted Cruz, which he has a path to the presidency. Ted Cruz, who's crazy and establishment Republicans do not like him. Imagine if it's him and Hillary and he wins with a Republican Congress and Senate. How effed is the country? Well, think about that. And Hillary.
I don't know, but I can tell you the Democratic Party is totally screwed. That's for sure.
Right, and what the establishment Democrats do not see is a Hillary candidacy will create such apathy with the excitable base, with the people that will go out and do stuff. And it will be a disaster. And the other irony is that Sanders does better head-to-head against the Republicans in a national election, but that's not really being, mainstream media is not really talking about that. They're creating their own narrative for their person because they live in this bubble, and I don't think they realize the ramifications. Or maybe it just doesn't matter, because no matter what happens to everybody else, it's not going to affect us. We're still going to have all our stuff. We're still going to have our position. Who cares? We're too big to fail. Go ahead, who cares?
Yeah, it's. I think, as I said before, I think it's going to play out over the next couple of months. I think that people are going to become more interested, more serious. By the end of January, people are going to go, okay, Hillary, you really got to show me something here, or Bernie, and I'm interested to hear what Bernie's solution is, and his solution right now doesn't work. Now, Hillary's solution is, as you said, just let's do what we're doing. We're doing fine. We'll see. I did find it kind of interesting. I saw Cruz interviewed, and by your favorite, Trish Reagan.
Well, then you obviously didn't even hear the interview, right? You probably got nothing from that. You're just waiting to cut back to the leg shot, right?
I couldn't believe how many times they did that.
Well, I mean, that's what Fox News is. It's just hot chicks in tight mini skirt, form-fitting little dresses sitting around. That's sort of how they roll.
Well,
with a lot of highlights in their hair.
Well, Cruz was so actually polite, because Trish didn't get the fact that his 10%. He's like, I don't understand. She's like, I don't understand. Why would somebody make, if the first $36,000 is free, why would somebody make $36,001? Then they're going to get taxed at 10%. And Cruz said, no, Trish, nobody gets taxed on their first $36,000. They only get taxed 10% of everything above $36,000. And so she was like, gee, let me think, maybe.
Well, she's there for the legs, dude. She is there for the legs, and what more do you need?
See, if that was Trump, it would have been back to the old Saturday Night Live, remember, Crossfire thing, when Dan Aykroyd would sit there and go, Jane, you ignorant slut.
I mean, when Fox is hiring their newscaster chicks, first they come in and all they see are the legs, and they make the first cut. They look at the legs and they make their cut, and they say, all right, these ones are out. Then they go up to here, and they look at everything up to the chin, and then they make their next cut. And then they go to the next thing, and they don't even look at the face. They look at the highlights in the hair, how they highlight their hair. And then they make their next cut. And then they look at they're not even talking yet. Then they look at their face without talking and make the next cut. Then after all that, they decide who they hire. Seriously, that's how they roll at Fox.
I think you're right on that, and I will have to say I give Cruz a lot of kudos for not going off on her like, my plan. He said my plan is on the internet. You can go read it, and this is right there.
Well, before Cruz went on, he was coaching, saying, look, you can't look at her legs. You can't do it. You just have to be counting sheep when you're there.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure they coached him on that, because, as we know, one of the other individuals who was interviewed.
Well, all the individuals, any individual on a Fox interview, all they want to do is oogle the interviewee or the interviewer. They want to oogle the interviewer. I mean, that's how Fox, it throws people off. It throws their guests off.
Except for the Donald, he's already got that area covered here. So.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, Donald has a jet full of whatever he wants, whenever he wants. I mean, all those people, and that's the separation. It's like, how can you really know what regular people want when you have whatever you want whenever you want it?
There was
I mean, when you could snap your fingers and go temples, and somebody just comes up and rubs your temples till you're satisfied.
Joseph Heller wrote a good book called Something Happened. Now, it's a very long book. Like, if you want to, do something over the weekend, and this is like 900 pages. But in there, he made the very point. He was an advertising executive,
right.
or the protagonist. And so somebody says to him, it's really tough out there for some people. Did you see the price of steak? And he's like, yes. And the guy says to him, "You have no idea what the price of steak is. What are you talking about?" And that's the problem. They have no clue of what the average middle class, let alone struggling family's doing.
No. You, both of us have rolled around with people with endless cash, and they don't even look at prices. Mean nothing. They don't even look. It's not even an issue. Especially because most daily life things like going out to eat or buying something at a department store is so minuscule in the pool of their riches, it just doesn't matter, you know?
I, you're exactly right. It's, they don't even ask the price. They just pull out their Black American Express card and hand it to them.
Like I was watching a Jared. I rarely watch regular TV, but I was, believe it or not, watching some football yesterday, I think. And when this was on, there was a Jared commercial for, jewelry, and it showed the woman literally in a walk-in closet bigger than where I live, than everywhere that I live. Just this, I mean, you could fit a family of 4 could comfortably live in this walk-in closet. She's looking at everything like, oh, what am I going to wear? Where's all my shoes? What I want to do for my jewelry? And then it opens up and there's like a door to Jared jewelry. I'm thinking, how many people have a walk-in closet as big as a house? So it's obviously they're catering to those people, and that's not most people. That is not most people. So,
well, I think it would be nice if someone came out with a plan that said, here is how we're going to lift everyone up. That's what the whole thing is about, is lifting everyone up.
Well, and this is again where Sanders is right, is something like that is only going to happen if there is a sweep everywhere of people on the same page in Congress and the Senate, and in all branches of government, because even if you had Bernie Sanders with Republican House and Senate, what's he ever going to get done? And especially when you have Lion Ryan saying, I'm stopping you everywhere you go. You ain't doing nothing, boy, old man. I'm the young generation. I'm the young guy. I'm Lion Ryan. I can say whatever. I can do whatever. I'm so powerful. I can lay down my own rules to get this gig. So shut up, old man. So, but if everybody, if there's like a movement, and see, that's what would be exciting about a Sanders candidacy is in like someone like you could run for Congress. People would get in on a movement would start that people would get excited about. And like Sanders said, is if there's enough people, you can say, well, we have to give you an offer you can't refuse, because at some point, when the unwashed masses all come together and people come together, then you have to do something. So, so that's really the only option. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same old stuff. And
well, I think this is actually step one in a change that's coming in the country, and that is that people are fed up. They're like, wait a second, this is not. And I think Obama really was the catalyst for that, because he came in saying, we want change, we're going to change. And realistically, is the average black person in Detroit better off than they were when he came? I don't think so. Are the kids thinking I have a better future than my parents? I don't think so. They're moving back into the parents. So this is really where I think this is step number one. And Bernie would be like someone who would give that vision. But I think Trump is like the same way. I don't see Ben Carson as that, and we should probably take just a minute or two and talk about the Carson problems in his book.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like Carson ever really expected to be in where he is now.
Yeah.
I don't think he. I think it seemed like he got into it just for pub, just to promote himself and to be on a big stage and talk about stuff and make a name for himself. That's why he's never an attack dog. It never seems like he's in it to win it as much as some of these other guys. And somehow he now finds himself with Huge popularity, wasn't expecting. It's clearly going to his head at this point, and he's clearly thinking he's more of an expert on things than he is, and he's probably being taken advantage of by all the people swooping in, because that's what those people do to get a piece of what's going on. So he's not really long conning it. Where, like, sweet little Marco Rubio, he's long conning it. He's looking long term, and shoring up all his people, and like, hey, I'll do whatever you say. You give me the briefcase, I'll walk it in. I just want to be the guy walking in the briefcase. So he's calculating and cunning and long con, but Carson, he's just surprised at where he's at and becoming full of himself. And the funny thing is the more he doubles down on things, the more people seem to like him, because at least he comes across, even though he's exaggerating stuff, he comes across as genuine. Whereas Carly does not come, she lies and it stretches the truth, but just comes across as evil as witchy as can be. But he has a good backstory. He has a nice demeanor. He's a handsome guy, a handsome, nerdy guy. So there's a lot of comfort with him. You know what I mean? That you don't get. It juxtasupposes some of these other candidates. They're nothing but vibrato. Like poor, I have now been relegated to kiddie table Christie. His bravado shtick was completely blown out of the water by Trump. Because of bravado, he's an amateur compared to Trump. He just looks like an amateur next to Trump.
Well, it's sort of the way people in New York look at people in New Jersey. It's like,
right.
If you were a player, you'd be in New York. Now, of course, if you become a real player, then you move out of New York and go to New Jersey.
Right. So
you don't want to live there.
Right. So, he's at the kiddie table now, and his shtick is just, it's not gonna. There's no room for his shtick in the lexicon of Republican craziness.
Well, here's the problem I see with all of these candidates, not except for maybe Trump, except for Trump and Bernie, I would say, is they're all thinking they have to play to a political party angle, even if they don't believe it. And so that's what Christie got caught up in. He had to get caught up in all of these things that really weren't germane to the good of the country on a grand scale. So, and Trump didn't have to do that because he's like, hey, I'm writing my own checks. I don't have to. And of course, for the Republican Party, that's problematic. And if you were to ask who's more Republican, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, in a closed room with the powers to be at the RNC, they would say Hillary Clinton.
Well, yeah, she is the Republican establishment choice for president, flat out.
I do agree with you that people like Trump and Ted Cruz, they worry those people. That's not.
Yeah, the establishment wing of the Republicans would rather see Hillary president than Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing about Ted Cruz is that then you get the full-on Republican House and Senate, because if he runs against Hillary, you're going to get a tremendous amount of apathy from Democratic voters. Tremendous amount. And the Republicans will get fired up because many people do not like her.
Yeah.
So I
think you're right. In this sense that a lot of the people who may have skipped voting, and it's ridiculously low compared to what it was back in the days when basically when the three power brokers controlled everything, people were voting 90-something%. So if I agree with you, if Hillary is the nominee, every Republican is going to make sure they vote because they're going to vote against her. Well, I don't even think they care who the Republican nominee is. They're just going to go out and vote against somebody.
Well, the irony is if a Hillary candidacy, the Republicans win either way. Because if she was Madam President, it's an establishment Republican victory. And if she's not Madam President, then the Republicans control everything. The Republican Party controls everything. So
we'll see. I'm really interested to see what happens in this Fox debate and your favorite, Trish Reagan will.
Well, there's going to be no debate then because they're not going to take. Well, because Fox.
She's in the JV debate, so she'll be there with Christie.
Okay.
And then they go to.
Well, you know who the JB debate is good for with Reagan, who will have the candidate who will absolutely not be swayed by her legs. There's a candidate in the JV who Christie will be drooling on. He'll want to eat those legs, and they'll set up the shot to where all you see is there'll be like a table with no front where they're just like shooting the questions and it's just like another leg shot. But there is a JV candidate who will not be swayed. Who will not be swayed by those legs.
Who is that?
Well, she is not interested in women's legs.
Does he happen to be a senator from a southern state?
I mean, you could put the hottest chick next to her and nothing. You'll feel nothing. Does not tingle the, tingle that androgynous zone at all. We know who that is.
I think so.
So I think we can dub a winner to the JV right there. There will be a lot of talk of boots on the ground in the Middle East.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be fun because the country's fucked. It's fun right now, but when there's a winter crowned, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun anymore. It's going to be a nightmare.
All right. Well, there it is. I think that's a good place to end this segment.
All right.